There are some types of toxins we can protect ourselves from and some that we cannot. And the same is true for stress. There are some types of stress that we can do something about, and there are often many kinds of stress that are simply unavoidable parts of life. So that basically gives us two primary approaches for using medicinal plants. The first is using plants during times of stress that we cannot avoid. And the second is using plants for protecting ourselves, basically from ourselves, during times of stress that we can change and we can avoid. Or another way to look at that is how we can use medicinal plants to help us unlearn habits of stress and relearn healthier habits of less stress. So in the first case, we are immediately faced with the challenge of how to use herbal medicine during stressful times, and stressful times frequently involve a lack of time. And so in order to actually get the benefits of the medicinal plants, they have to be extremely user-friendly. They have to be easy to use. They have to be something that we can use as we're running through our busy day and so forth. A lot of people are already using herbs this way, and we could say that this is supporting an unhealthy lifestyle in a certain way. For example, people are using a lot of adaptogenic types of energy-boosting herbs, stimulant herbs to get through the day. And people who are involved in a lot of athletic activity also are using herbs that boost athletic performance. Now, on the one hand, using herbs this way can have some benefits, but in the long run, the herbs can also contribute to greater depletion and greater exhaustion. And so this is the starting point of actually exploring how to use herbs properly during a stressful period of time. Because what we do not want is to actually be supporting false energy while the true fatigue is worsening. Therefore, we have to be very careful about the kind of tonic herbs that we are using to support the body, and we have to choose specific herbs that are more nutritional in nature and don't have such stimulating kinds of effects that can produce a lot of artificial energy, false heat, adrenal exhaustion, and so forth. There are definitely a lot of herbs that can be used in this particular way, but that's not necessarily the best choice in general. The best choice really during stressful periods of time is to use herbs that are primarily relaxing to the nervous system and strengthening to the nervous system and balancing to the endocrine system, and specifically to the adrenal glands. For this purpose, we look to a group of herbs that is called tropho-restorative. Tropho-restorative means that the herbs have the capacity to balance different tissues and organ functions, whether they are overstimulated or understimulated. Because frequently, when we are in a period of stress, we see that both are happening. We see that some parts of our system are overstimulated, while at the same time, they're becoming depleted. And so there's a mixture of overstimulation and depletion that has to be addressed. And this particular group of tropho-restorative herbs have remarkable powers to stabilize the different systems and organs in the body and help to return the body back to a state of balance. One of the most famous of the Western tropho-restorative herbs that can be safely consumed by everybody, widely known, it's a major herb that I talk about all the time, and that is the milky oat seed. And the milky oat seed is in a category of herbs that is highly nutritious. There's actually many herbs that give concentrated nutrition to the body, and this is one of the most important approaches during times of stress. It's also one of the major restorative and rejuvenative approaches after the period of stress has subsided a bit. There's a number of essential oils that can be used in aromatherapy form, and these are very user-friendly when we are busy because we can just carry them around in their bottles in our pocket, and we can take them out and put a couple drops on the palms and hold them up to our sinuses and have a little direct palm inhalation. And there's actually quite a number of oils that will produce a significant relaxing effect on the brain and the nervous system. And a lot of good science is showing that several of the oils, things like clary sage and lavender, a lot of the flower oils can actually calm down the overstimulation of the sympathetic nervous system almost instantaneously. Their action works through supporting the restoration of parasympathetic relaxation responses. And so this is a way that we can integrate different forms of herbal medicine together. We can take some of the highly nutritious herbs, strengthen the nervous system, and we can also breathe some of the essential oils. And we can also use the essential oils in our car. We can use the essential oils at home, in the background, in a diffuser, and so forth. So that's how we start to build these kinds of holistic integrated therapies. We look at different ways that they can be consumed, different user-friendly ways that we can use them throughout the day. And then eventually what we are going for is seeing that we can actually feel better under stressful circumstances. And that is entirely possible. But then we want to go a step further, and we want to start to move away from as much stress as we can. Now, let's keep in mind that there is unavoidable stress at various periods of time, but stress researchers also tell us that the vast majority of stress is actually an internally created response to external conditions. And that means that an individual's reaction to different external circumstances can be very different. Obviously, a person who is tired and run down, their nervous system is deeply exhausted, their adrenal glands are exhausted, and so forth, is going to have less ability to cope with stress than a person who is healthy and balanced. Therefore, the real spiritual learning opportunity during periods of stress is not just how to manage our stress effectively while we're going through it, but how to use the opportunity to really learn how to react to the world in a different way. And that's a lifestyle change, and that requires a higher level of responsibility than just grabbing some energy herbs from the shelf at the health food store. It requires that we actually practice some things in terms of our diet and in terms of some meditation times. And this is also an excellent time to integrate herbal medicine into these kind of practices, because the herbs help us tremendously with strengthening and stabilizing our concentration, with our relaxation, and so forth. So using the herbs to manage stress is just the first part, but then we want to transition fairly quickly, as soon as possible, to actually using herbs that are training us on a deeper level to be in a more nourished, balanced state. Now, in my opinion, this is really the beauty of herbal medicine, because if we just expect the herbs to just do something to us or for us, then we're not really thinking in terms of a biological partnership. We're not thinking about working consciously with the consciousness that the plants are offering us. On the other hand, if we value what the plants are offering us, then we can study what they do, and then we can really pay attention to them, and we can work with them, and that will enhance immensely what the plants are actually trying to accomplish, or what they offer us will be manifest much more powerfully and effectively than if we're just taking things on the run and we're not paying close attention to the kinds of physiological changes that they might be trying to instill in us. A very good example of that is the opportunity to use herbs that help us relax and get better sleep at night. And so therefore, there's a kind of symptomatic approach that people have where they think that, oh, well, if I just take a big dose of valerian in the evening, that's going to take care of everything. And of course, that doesn't really work for a lot of people, because they are so extremely overstimulated from so much stress during the day that they can't expect that the plant is just going to knock them out. But on the other hand, if people start to consciously work with the relaxing herbs on an ongoing basis during the day, then it gives the opportunity to start retraining the nervous system. And so this is one of the most important strategies that I have found, is to use a variety of relaxing herbs. And it could be that valerian is one of them, or maybe it's lemon balm, or maybe it is skullcap, or maybe it's motherwort. There's so many different relaxing herbs that strengthen the nervous system, but also have very significant antispasmodic, anti-inflammatory, calmative kind of powers, and there's even stronger ones. There's things like valerian and hops and things that really have a sedative kind of effect. But the point is that we want to use these plants with mindfulness. We want to have a relationship with these plants where we are becoming receptive to their powers, and by doing so, their powers will actually increase. That means, of course, that we're going to have to take a little bit of time, and taking time is the beginning of starting to manage our stress. We take time to sit down, and we take time to make the tea, and we take time to mindfully sip the tea, and just taking time with the herbs is going to help us to decompress. And then when we finally consume the herbs, we have the opportunity to have a little mindfulness meditation where we're becoming aware of the flavors, and as we're paying attention to the flavors, we notice the aromas, and suddenly we are already in a more relaxed state of mind. And being in that relaxed state of mind, we are also starting to open the body, open ourselves to the powers of the plants to start to retrain our nervous system. Now, stress has a tendency to be a cumulative process, especially when we are faced with the same unpleasant circumstances and stimuli day after day. The mind is racing around because it can't find answers to the conditions that we're in and so forth. And after a while, we find that we have trained the brain through mental habits. And by training the brain with negative mental habits, that we have trained the nervous system, and that has trained the musculoskeletal system, and our blood pressure and everything has become accustomed to the stress. Now, working with herbs gives us the opportunity to unlearn that and to learn something else. And so when we use stress-reducing herbs throughout the day, and it can be many categories, not just the relaxant nervines or not just the nutritive herbs, it can be many different groups of herbs that can be used this way. But what happens is that we can slowly start to feel something different. And then we can remember, oh yes, this is what it felt like to feel more calm. And then as we remember that more frequently, we can superimpose that consciously as a kind of response to stress when the external stimuli happens again, and we would normally contract and feel anxious and so forth. We could possibly just reach for a cup of chamomile tea, and suddenly it would remind us biologically, physiologically, that there is a different way to react to stress. So this is just a very brief introduction, of course, to a couple of ideas. The first being that we can use herbs to manage stressful conditions, physically, mentally, and emotionally. There's lots of ways of doing it besides the ones that I mentioned. But more importantly, we can use herbs, medicinal plants, to relearn our stress response to an increasingly stressful world. And that's where I think the real beauty of herbal medicine is when we enter into a kind of partnership with the plants and learn what they do, be receptive to what they do, pay attention to what they do, and that way we will start to see significant progress.